It seems that no matter which party was in power since the late 90s until today in Congress, that Congress, no matter if it was Republicans or Democrats, seemed to be fundamentally, for the most part, out of touch with the American people. Republicans in Congress, under the leadership of Dennis Hassert and Tom DeLay, though in touch with the American people and the good of the country on foreign affairs, here at home spent way too much money, didn't act quickly enough on, or at all, on immigration reform, and they forgot that they were sent to Washington to control the role and size of the federal government. Republicans suffered a defeat in 2006 because in the really the past 6 or 7 years previous to that election, Republicans had lost their way. They forgot why they were brought to power in 1994. Today, under the leadership of Speaker John Boehner and Majority Leader Eric Cantor, we have turned the page. Yesterday, with the leadership of Speaker Boehner and Majority Leader Cantor, Congress voted along party lines, unfortunately, with only 3 Democrats joining the Republicans, in repealing the Obama health care bill, which raises premiums on the American people, cuts Medicare, and increases the size of the national debt. I'm pleased that Republicans in Congress finally have listened to not only the conservative base that helped them get there, but also independents and even some Democrats in repealing a disastrous bill that was crafted in a partisan fashion that cost taxpayers billions of dollars by raising the cost of premiums for the notion that the government forcing people to buy health insurance will lower the cost, when in fact the bill will actually raise costs on the American consumer. And it will hurt our seniors because it cuts Medicare Advantage. The House of Representatives voted to repeal the bill, luckily. And I thank Speaker Boehner, Majority Leader Cantor, most importantly my fellow Americans, for standing up to this administration and saying no to this horrible bill. I hope that Republicans in the Senate stand up as well, and I hope that there are some swing Democrats who vote with the Republicans. Right now, we probably don't have the votes to get this thing repealed in the Senate. And I hope the President of the United States recognizes that Americans don't support his bill, that his bill increases the cost of health care premiums, and it cuts Medicare on our seniors, and it costs taxpayers billions of dollars. There will be tax increases down the road, in addition to the ones that have already been put in place, not to mention that this will increase the national deficit, despite what any Washington-based organization like the CBO says. And the projected cost is already $1 trillion. I hope the President works with Speaker Boehner, Majority Leader Cantor, Republican leaders in both the Senate and in Congress, and most importantly, the people of this country, to create a bill that gives more rights to the states and helps provide health care to people through the private market, not through a government-mandated or government-run plan. But I fear that Democrats in the Senate are going to stop the repeal of Obamacare, and I fear that even if somehow it gets passed, the President will veto it. The President has indicated he's willing to work to improve the bill, which is a good start, but I fear that it's too little too late, simply because the bill as a whole is not a good bill. It doesn't benefit the American people. The only people it benefits are Democrats who are relying on money from liberal special interest groups and unions, and it helps the health insurance companies get a taxpayer-funded monopoly rather, that really does not help the consumer. Look, Newt Gingrich, Bob Dole, and others, and John Boehner was one of them at that point in 1994, ran to reform welfare and return the country to fiscal responsibility. And under the leadership of those individuals and others, for a time in the mid-90s, 95, 96, 97, we did return to that era. Newt Gingrich, despite his flaws, was a great House Speaker. He did what he said he would do in the 94 campaign, for the most part. Senator Dole, obviously, who was the Senate leader at the time, resigned to run for president. I think it was probably a mistake of Republicans in Congress to, despite his plummeting poll numbers, Newt Gingrich fundamentally did what was best for the country during his time as Speaker. And I think that when he left in 1998, and I don't remember exactly, I think Dennis Hastert took over, it did not help matters. Let's face it, Dennis Hastert lost touch with why the Republicans came to power to begin with. And I think him and Tom DeLay really just took a direction that hurt the party, especially in the 2006 election, despite being correct on national security issues. I think on the economy, they got it wrong. And I think that I'm happy to say that I believe that we now have a new group, like Boehner and Cantor and others, who have taken a stance and who have been better so far than Hastert or DeLay. Time will tell if they're better than Gingrich. So far, let me just say that in their public conduct, they probably have been better than Gingrich. But time will only tell if policy-wise they will be. So far, they are on the right track. And let me just say that I don't want to insult Gingrich, but I hope they're better than Gingrich, not because I don't like Gingrich, but because, of course, you always hope that you learn from your mistakes. Speaking of the GOP Congress, the Conservative Study Group, a group of conservatives in Congress, led by Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio, amongst others, have identified a bill that does not cut defense spending, does not also reform entitlements, that cuts the deficit by $2.5 trillion or more. And I'm happy to say Majority Leader Cantor, who most would consider part of the GOP leadership and establishment, has embraced the bill, says that it starts a very serious conversation about government spending. I have not read all the specifics. I like what I hear so far. I'd like to see entitlements reformed. I don't want to see the defense budget touched. I think that this is a very good start, and frankly, it's a better start than I thought that the Republican majority would have. I hope that this spending restraint is enacted, and Americans have showed to their representatives and their senators and to this administration that they want spending restraint. They support our troops, they support our veterans, but they want spending restraint, especially here at home. And let me also say to those of you who say we should cut defense spending, as we end the war in Iraq, we will use some of that revenue to reduce the deficit. Obviously, some of that is going to continue to go to foreign affairs related issues, but some of that will go to the national deficit. That is a huge savings. I don't advocate in any way withdrawing from Iraq for the sake of reducing the debt, but as we achieve victory there, we have achieved victory there. As we withdraw, it's just a fact that the money will start coming back here, and we'll be able to use that for different things, and that will help reduce the deficit and allow us to not have to increase the defense budget, but redirect existing funds for defense-related practices. So I think that so far the Republican Congress is off to a very good start. I hope that it continues that way, and I hope the president works with them, because let's be honest here. You all know that I am not a fan of this administration, but I don't believe that it is in the country's best interest to have a president who fights with the Republican Congress and nothing gets done. So I hope that we are able to work on a bipartisan basis without having to concede what the American people voted for in the last election.